Growing up orphaned, me and my brother were never deprived of love, as our uncle took us in and raised us as his own. My father passed away when I was in high school and had to drop out of school due to our financial crisis, as my dad was the only bread earner in the family. My mother had passed away shortly after giving birth to my younger brother, sometime during the late 90s. I can't remember. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, and his wife took me and my brother in and raised us as their own, along with two of our cousins. At that time, my brother was about 9 years old. My uncle provided for his tuition, so he was able to continue with his studies. I, on the other hand, was unfortunate. As my uncle couldn't afford it, he also had to take care of his children's education. I didn't mind at all. In fact, I was very thankful that at least my brother and I had a roof over our heads and food on our table. Even though my uncle and aunt took us in at a young age, they never differentiated between us and their children. We got as much love and support as our cousins, to a point that he'd sit and have fatherly talks with us. During one such session, my uncle asked me to look for a job and told me that I had to start supporting and sustaining myself and stand on my own feet, as I was coming of age. Following his advice, I immediately started searching. However, I had a hard time landing one, as I had no qualifications and little as to no experience whatsoever. I was just about 17 at the time, and the fact that I was a school dropout made it all the more difficult. One day my uncle told me that there was opening at a nearby government university, that they were on the lookout for young individuals for the post of a night guard. Being about 6'1" and very well built, even at that age, so you can understand why my uncle tried to convince me, or rather push me to apply for the job. Lucky for me, they didn't ask for any qualification or experience, as I was in the clear, and the fact that my uncle had a few connections, he was able to pull a few strings to let me in. Just a week after my application, we got a call from the university stating that I've got the job. The next day I made my way to the university. The campus was huge. Walking from the main gate to the administrative section took me about half an hour. They welcomed me instantly and gave me a pair of uniforms. I felt good as this was my first job, and I knew deep within that my father would be proud of me. The starting pay was awful, but I figured it's better than nothing. Apart from me, there were 4 more new recruits who looked like they were in their late 20s. However, I never got a chance to meet or interact with them, as they were assigned to different duty posts across 1,200 acres of the university campus. You can say the campus had its own town, with residential areas for professors and other staffs, hostels for students, playgrounds, mini mall, a few food joints, grocery stores, gymnasiums, a gas station, etc. Shortly after my arrival and putting on my uniform, we were summoned for a short assembly by our superior, who then briefed us about our duties. We started our night duty immediately and headed to our respective posts for the night. Being a new recruit, I was guided by a senior named Frankie. He showed me around the areas I was assigned to, which included the library. Frankie was really cool for his age. He was in his 40s, but he looked like he was about 25. He had been working at the university for about 15 years now, so he knew the place in and out, all the nooks and corners. After we had dinner, we headed to the library, and it was about 9 p.m. at the time. Frankie showed me around, and we were exchanging lively conversations to make things less awkward. Then I jokingly asked if there's anything else I should be worried about. Then out of nowhere, with a change of tone, he starts telling me about his weird paranormal experiences within the walls of the library. The university library was a huge structure which composed of different sections based on different subjects. He goes on that throughout his years of service, he'd often witnessed a dark apparition looking down at him from the English section from the second-story window, and whenever he went to check, there was no one in sight. He also mentioned that things would move on their own: tables, chairs, doors closing and opening, books falling off from the shelves. I was kind of skeptical, as I was not a firm believer of ghosts or the paranormal, and I also thought that he was just trying to scare me, being a new recruit. So I playfully commented that it would be fun to witness such things, and started to mock Frankie, teasing him that he was being a wuss. Frankie, however, was quiet. he only muttered in a faint voice, "Careful what you wish for." The next few weeks were normal until one day when Frankie was temporarily transferred to another area in the university. I was instructed by the superiors to continue my duty alone for a few nights, as Frankie had to cover for a guard who's been hospitalized due to food poisoning. One morning at around 5 a.m., I was opening the locks to the various doors along the different sections in the library, and as I was just about to unlock the door to the English section, I saw a dark shadow bolting from one end to the other corner of the room, disappearing between the aisles of one of the bookshelves. This section had glass doors so you can get a clear view of the room inside and around. It was already dawn and the sun was almost out. Thinking that it might be an intruder, I immediately checked all the corners but was surprised to see that no one was around. Slightly puzzled and at the same time not wanting to believe what Frankie had mentioned earlier, I decided to leave, but just as I was about to, I heard what sounded like pages flipping. I glanced around, but as I saw nothing was out of the ordinary, I swiftly left the area. Now a bit nervous, I hastily continued unlocking the other sections. Still feeling a bit uneasy and trying to comprehend what just happened, I finally exited the building and I was glad at the sight of some of the students already out jogging. Little did I know that the following night would be my last, working as a night guard. I was transferred to another part of the campus and was once again reunited with Frankie. This area was located downhill in a secluded part of the university, surrounded by forest. That particular area was casually called the pump house, as it housed an old tin structure which consisted of pipes, generators, and machinery, which allegedly supplied water to the whole university. It was located in the middle of a forest, about 4 miles from the main gate. Frankie and I got the chance to catch up after we have had our dinner. I told him about the incident at the library and that I was totally creeped out. Frankie nodded and said, "That's what I've been trying to tell you all along." Though I didn't break it to him, but I think I was beginning to believe in the paranormal. It was late at night and the shed had no lights, so we were using a lantern and were keeping ourselves warm by the campfire. As we were talking, he asked me to fetch the kettle from the shed to prepare tea. As I made my way in, I heard a faint sound of what seemed like knives sharpening coming from outside. I went to check but saw nothing. I went back to Frankie and told him about it. He replied, "Maybe it's just the wind, and since the shed was all tin." We shoved it off, but the noises grew louder. It really did sound like knives when you try to sharpen them, rubbing it on a sharpening rock or something. A few moments later, we both hear a low moan which was unmistakably that of a woman. I looked at Frankie again and he said maybe it's a couple outside who are just playing a game of hormone let go, further adding that he had surprised a few students in the past while they were going about their business in secluded places. We both let out a laughter, and the noises seemed to stop momentarily upon hearing us. But shortly after, we hear the moaning again, but this time it sounded like the woman was struggling, almost like she was in trouble. As I was just about to get up to investigate, Frankie held my arm and tells me not to go out, just try to ignore the noises. This didn't seem like Frankie. I tried to let go from his grasp to get up, but his grip grew tighter and said, "Son, you don't want to go out there." I was freaked out by his statement. But just then the lantern mysteriously went off. The shed was engulfed in darkness, save from the light coming from the campfire. A wailing of a woman could be heard from a distance, drawing closer, and just then a dark shadow, unmistakably a woman with long wavy hair, could be seen crawling out of the bush and onto the tin roof in front of us. I was terrified, but Frankie still holds on to me, with his grip getting tighter, and says, "Don't move. Don't be scared. Let it pass." Unable to take it anymore, I shoved off his hand and just bolted away from the pump house, ran for 4 miles straight, and must have become unconscious after that. Frankie and the other guards found me the next morning, passed out and lying on the grass, just a short distance from the main gate. Barely conscious, I noticed the other security personnel surrounding me, and the head of the security murmured to one of our seniors. It was a bad idea sending the boy to the pump house. I woke up in the campus medical center that afternoon. They had called my uncle as well. Remembering about the past night, I couldn't bear the thought of going one more night at that god-forsaken place. So I told my uncle I wanted to quit. Though a bit disappointed but concerned for my well-being, He eventually decided to talk to the dean, who was an old friend of his, and submitted a resignation for me. They had released me that evening. Just when I was about to leave, I noticed Frankie standing in the hallway. As my uncle was still busy talking to the dean, I excused myself and went to Frankie. Out of curiosity of what really happened last night, I asked Frankie and the other guards about the pump house, to which they said, a couple of years ago, apparently a final year student who studied at the university was abducted by a couple of guys. She was defiled and stabbed to death inside the very walls of the shed. Just then I started to remember the sounds of the knife sharpening and the low moans and screams. It was the most frightening experience I've ever had in my life. But upon hearing the story of the girl, it made me feel sad and angry, as the guys who had committed the unimaginable act were never brought to justice.